none of us are free until all of us are free. I've also actually been banned from Sydney for protesting.
Really?
For Palestine. There is so much strength in talking about mental health because you see a lot of activists who are incredible, who are so strong and brave, but get burnt out, and that's when we have that high turnability, and a lot of people who hold so much knowledge and awareness disappear and leave the movement. We're never defined by the work we do. We're defined by the hearts we carry and the values we carry, and I think it's so important for us to never solely focus on a title or a role, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, in this fight together, and we're all equal.
Hello, welcome to Earth Talk, the podcast for people and the planet. A space where we talk about global challenges from different perspectives, whilst we try to focus on solutions and reasons to be hopeful in times like these. I'm Leo Holdak, and thank you for tuning in.
Hello, welcome to today's episode. Today our dear guest is Raven. She's a founder of Community Care Collective and as well as a grassroots organizer. Thank you so much for taking your time being here. And first, how are you?
Doing well. I feel I feel grounded, and I feel like it's been such a hectic week, a bit overwhelming, a bit overstimulating, but at the end of it has been such a opportunity for a lifetime. I'm really grateful to be here.
All right, so for all the people who are right now listening, maybe some of you have seen you, maybe some have listened to your voice, maybe some don't. And do you mind to give us a small introduction to yourself that we a bit know who you are?
Oh, for sure. So my name is Raven. I also I was born in Australia. I grew up in Sydney. I've been an activist all my life. I come from a line of warriors, matriarchs, my ancestors who all believed in equality and justice, and so I come from the religion of Sikhism, and that has really shaped who I am today, my values, and of selfless service and for community. I started an advocacy when I was 12 years old.
Wow, that's quite young.
I was really passionate. After I went to India, I think I saw poverty at its fullest, I think. And I think going back home and seeing what burst my bubble to my safe zone in Australia, and I really wanted me to fight for justice and equality. And then when I was 15, 16, I became a policy advisor for a peak body called New South Wales Council of Social Services.
Wow.
And I was working on women's rights. So working on the financial economic empowerment of young girls and women in New South Wales, so the state of Australia, in Australia.
That's impressive, and also just to make this straight up front, also quite honestly for the people right now listening, I haven't done much research when I ask you hey, would you like to join the podcast show? And so most of the things right now you are telling, I didn't know.
Yeah,
and that's quite impressive.
Oh,
wow,
thank you. I appreciate that.
I think before we move further, I think just I have already one question which is just popping up, which is what kind of people are your parents? Because somehow, I think that's a big gift, maybe also, which is transferred from your, as you already mentioned, your ancestors, that you are in a line of very powerful matriarchy, of women in that sense. But yeah, how are your parents that they gave those values
Freedom,
for you in such a young age? How are they?
They were incredible parents. In the beginning, they didn't understand what I was doing.
Okay.
They saw it as volunteering, but my mom is very nurturing.
Yeah.
And she also inspires me greatly. She left school when she was 15, so I'm actually the first female in my whole entire family to finish high school and go to university. But she was always very instilling in me care, and she was a family daycare worker herself. So I grew up with a lot of huge community of kids around me, and was very much grew up with her, witnessing her. My dad is sacrificed so much for me to be where I am today. And he also, when he was in high school, he would fundraise because he grew up in Pakistan, Punjab, India. He would raise money for refugees who were
Yeah, wow.
escaping like discrimination. I believe it was in Rohingya. I think it was Rohingya refugees, and he was very passionate as well. But I think they both as well survived so much trauma and so much violence, and unfortunately, I also experienced that as well. But I think they saw, I guess, what I was doing. They believed that they knew I was very smart and knew I was making good choices. And I think truly are some of the most supportive parents I could ever dreamed of.
That's beautiful. I hope maybe that they may also listen to this
Yeah, me too,
to this
yeah.
bit now, that they can like be really proud and really grateful about those words. I think every parent would be so happy when they hear that, like the daughter, the son, or all genders and non-genders in between would like say that. It would be so nice. Okay, well, so you started like a little bit like how you like kind of like started your activism, and how did it continue from that way? Like
for sure, yeah.
you started 12, 16, 15, you were like in this like kind of like a state body.
Advisor, yeah.
Yeah, and how, I don't know, what did you do from there on?
Afterwards, for sure. When I I was working with the Peak Body for a long time, from 2016 to 2019. Whilst I was in that organization, they actually invited me in my final year of high school, and I was 16 years old, to represent their organization in Australia at the United Nations Commission on Status of Women. So I went to New York in my final year of high school, and that was an opportunity for a lifetime. It really changed my whole life. Especially when I was going through at the time a really difficult time, like very much a lot was personal stuff was happening, but that really brought so much brightness. And then I had a very great mentor as well from the organization, who really led me to the person I am today. And so 17, and then I went there again the following year when I was 18, and then when I was 19 I went there as well. But then I also discovered grassroots activism. I discovered grassroots groups like protesters, and I was also part of a campaign in Australia that led to the decriminalization of abortion. So we now abortion is no longer criminalized in New South Wales. And so from that organizing, I saw the real strength of mobilizing and people coming together and fighting for justice and change, both political and civil society. And when the power of those two working together, I've seen that many times again when I've been a part of campaigns and led campaigns. And then, so when I was 17, 18, 19, and then I got burnt out for a few years. And I also was a board director to an international organization called
You were so young at the time as well.
Oh yeah, I was 20.
Yeah.
And I went all the way it was the Youth Coalition for Sexual and Reproductive Rights. And this was COVID as well. So we had all these like things set. But I just I believe all these experiences and people, that's for me the biggest key thing of why I do the work I do is and why I still have had the energy to keep going, even though I've been doing it for so long, and I've experienced a lot of discrimination and tokenism, and especially being a person who's brown and a woman and who's also queer in Australia. So the intersections, but I used to see that as a barrier, but now I see that as what's made me unique and what's a strength almost.
Definitely.
And I'll hold it with pride. And so
and you should.
Thank you so
seriously.
much.
And also I'm upfront really sorry like about those things which were happening to you. And also let's be quite honest here, I also tried my best now to navigate this space in the most respectful way, as I am white cis hetero dude, like
Appreciate that a lot, yeah.
and making this conversation. I know it's also like let's be honest, like many people like kind of like me with those attributes, as I just mentioned, are causing a lot of harm.
But I also have witnessed you as well, like the way that you've made people feel, like have a very emotional, like a lot of people that felt like very emotionally connected to you, and who are from vulnerable, marginalized communities, and like so you've done such an incredible job of making it such an inclusive and accessible space. I just want
I
to
really appreciate it. Yeah, I also don't mean like about me personally. I'm just like more like in general perspective,
yeah, for
like
sure.
that I just hope that you feel comfortable in that
Yeah,
sense
thank
that
you. Yeah, I do. Yeah, for
that
sure.
we get like I don't know, that we can have like a conversation about also
For
maybe
sure.
things which are a bit hurting for you. Maybe before we talk maybe also a bit about your burnout, how you came there and how you also noticed that you're burned out, because I think this is like one topic I would really like to focus in our conversation, how we can maybe also avoid burnout, as we were talking about that briefly before like this conversation. There's still some people out there maybe who never had touch with grassroots activism. Like they don't know what it is like. Like I think they also may feel like a big like, ooh, that's like a strange like. Sometimes people are, I don't know. I'm not sure if I can connect to them whatsoever. Like I really don't know if I'm allowed to enter that space whatsoever. Can you maybe like share a little bit like how did your journey start and that, and how was the experience like
For sure.
surrounding yourself by grassroots activists, and what did you guys do?
For sure. I was uh a convener of a statewide group called Australian Student Environment Network. I also believe that during the time I was very much an overachiever. I was always going without actually processing my wins and like my lessons that I've learned. I realized now looking back that it was always, all these doors were always opening for me. And I actually had really cool opportunities. Like I had opportunities to be a part of do a TED talk or do an ABC documentary.
Wow.
I unfortunately turned it down because I wasn't in a good headspace.
Yeah.
But now I'm waiting for the perfect time, I guess, to tell my story, I believe. Though, yeah, looking back.
Here
we are now. Exactly. So true. Like, I wouldn't want it anywhere but here to do this story. And I believe being part of a lot of intense movements. So being part of the Black Lives Matter movement in Australia, working with First Nations communities on the front lines, and really seeing, I guess, the quality of this world, I believe, and like especially like seeing I do a lot of work in Australia for homeless communities. So I do a lot of provide mutual aid. So I'm part of a group as well called Food Not Bombs, which is a vegan group, and we are involved with like obtaining produce, dumpster diving, like making sure food is not wasted, and we really believe that food is a right, not a privilege.
Definitely. So do I. It's so fucked up. Oh, sorry. Okay, well, we couldn't curse. I think in this podcast, it's like at the end of people don't mind. I guess so. But really, I find it so ludicrous when you think about that. Like literally, like food, it's just wasted when it's
For
like still
real.
like and.
So much food is wasted.
It's
and
crazy, yeah.
When you have people who are starving, when you have people who have nothing, it's crazy to think about. And so we do it twice a week.
Yeah.
And it's been a real honor helping coordinate that group as well. And I think that kind of activism as well as direct action. So I've been involved with protesting. I have a megaphone protest actually. This
wow,
year.
yeah, I see it.
And yeah, I've been a protest megaphone. I always megaphone and rallies.
Yeah.
Very big rallies. I've also actually been banned from Sydney for protesting.
Really?
For Palestine. So one of the first actions in Sydney, I was leading it, not leading it, but like I was on the megaphone.
Yeah.
And it was in the Darling Harbour, and it was against Israeli arm dealers.
Yeah.
And because I was on the megaphone, they saw me as a ringleader, which is not how grassroots organizing works at all. But I got targeted, and then they wanted to make an example, so they banned me from my whole entire city, and it was my bail condition. And then got gangster charges, and it was insane. And you know what's really funny as well? Like at that same time, like I was literally going to go to the United Nations to fight for Australians' rights. So I was going to high level political forums overseas. So whilst I was banned, I was doing UN stuff as well. So, but as an activist, I believe strongly in justice and freedom for all, and none of us are free until all of us are free.
Yeah.
And it truly, when in a world where there's all these issues that all interconnect, and we need to really go to the deep root of all these issues that often in these spaces we discuss on the surface, and we're not really addressing the issues that the most vulnerable in our communities are facing, and they continuously are falling through the cracks. And as someone who's a survivor, as someone who's been through homelessness, who's been through addiction, who's seen and has a disability, I understand the struggle. And truly, I'm so lucky as well to have had such incredible opportunities when I was very young, to then do the work I'm doing now, to have the different platforms I have, to do the grassroots, to do the national, and to do the international advocacy. And I think there is so much strength in talking about mental health, because you see a lot of activists who are incredible, who are so strong and brave, but get burnt out, and that's when we have that like high turnability, and a lot of people who hold so much knowledge and awareness disappear and leave the movement.
Yeah, I get you.
And that's something that I've been facing as well, like having to do upskilling workshops, because a lot of time we no longer have the organizers like we used to have in Australia.
We will dive into like the topic of mental health, as you just mentioned, like in about a few moments.
Hey, I'm sorry for the small interruption. I just want to mention shortly that Earth Talk is not a commercial podcast project. To stay independent, we need supporters who make this project possible on a sustainable basis. If you like this podcast, feel free to join our Patreon community. The link is in the description. And also every share, comment, like in the socials or good rating wherever you're listening to this podcast is a big support. Thanks a lot in advance, and now back to the conversation.
But just like before we start into that, because I think this is like one topic you're really, really passionate about, I would just love to maybe talk with you shortly about the values you just mentioned. And you just mentioned freedom. Maybe some people right now who are listening to you, they maybe have an idea what your values are, maybe some don't. So as you're quite a passionate person, I feel, and that you're really doing a lot of work maybe which is also quite uncomfortable, which is also hard to yourself, you know. I believe there's still like a big reason that you're doing that, and that you have also like a set of values which are really dear to you. But maybe you can like, I know, give us like a small introduction. It's like such a broad question, but still maybe what's important to you as like a value, or what you feel like which is really lacking in this world, and what you're kind of like working on and fighting for with the work you're doing. And then afterward, I would love to talk with you about mental health.
For sure. But it's such an important question for everyone to know and to do the work to understand what their values are. I believe for myself, my values consist of people, community, and care. I believe I really am built around liberation, I believe, and the power of liberation. And I believe like there is so much, especially around joy. Like joy, resistance. These are values in me that believe so strongly about, and I think building I think as well just I think I just deeply, very much value people's safety and security, and the fact that I really the main reason why I do a lot of what I do is this inner protector of me, wanting to protect people, wanting to make sure they don't experience what the experiences that I've experienced or have witnessed. And I believe there is so much in a world that needs kindness. I think there's more. At the end of the day, we're not really doing anything special about spreading awareness and fighting for justice. I think for me, justice, liberation, and just a future. I really value the future of and the work that has led to us being here in the first place. I really value my ancestors who fought so hard for me to be where I am today and sacrificed so much for me to be where I am now. And I really value the future who are continuing the work that I'm doing currently in the past. I think right now I see my role in this ecosystem is to really connect and continuing to build, as well as truly make it accessible as possible. With witnessing there's so many barriers that lead to someone like me, like I had to work 10 times harder to be where I am. Like I had to really prove myself again and again, and really had to go through a lot of I don't know, I think just yeah, and I believe that like it shouldn't be what it is now for a lot of young people in the space. Like young people should feel empowered, should feel passionate, and shouldn't feel like they're taken advantage of. Like I see a lot of young people in these spaces, especially who are here on a volunteering basis, but put so much work and effort that they should be paid to do. And I believe that like in a world that wants to build the future generation leaders, we must first practice what we preach and walk the talk. And a lot we're talking about in these spaces especially is equality, but we don't even have the world and the future. But like especially with who are in the room, there's so much gatekeeping. There's so many leaders who there's not an equal representation of women in these spaces or indigenous voices. I think sorry for going a bit of a damn sorry, but
no, it's fine. But I think like the people right now listening and also myself, like I get you. I also do get you a bit better in that sense. I like it's not like a big surprise what you're saying to me right now.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes it's important to really think about what you do care about or what your values are.
Oh, true.
To kind of like
understand me a bit more.
Yeah, and also just like to kind of like or sometimes also to realign your compass again sometimes,
for
because
real.
it's sometimes also hard to navigate this world,
for
you know.
real, yeah.
And yeah, I think that was really beautiful what you said. I'm really grateful that you just shared that. So we now mention this word quite often, and I think I would love to now talk about mental health with you and kind of like get into the belly of the beast somehow. So you mentioned that you were in the past burned out in as a result of that you were doing activism, and you also mentioned that you noticed like there's many people kind of like are in a space, they're doing this work voluntarily, don't get paid, like it's so much work, and also it always seems so important somehow that you can't stop. So before we like get really into that, maybe we can first like share like how did you get burned out? How did you notice that you were burned out? Maybe some people right now listening, they maybe think they're burnt out, maybe they don't, I don't know, but maybe some maybe are burnt out and they actually don't know that there's like a word for that. So how would you describe how was that experience for you?
For me, burnout was extreme exhaustion and it led to chronic fatigue. Because I was overworking myself, and I was literally doing like 50 hours per week, and I was so passionate. But then it was also burnout occurred for me when I was no longer passionate about what I was doing. I no longer, not passionate, it was just more so just like I no longer had the energy to do all what I wanted to do. And it was so much like, there's so many times where I was just like, I couldn't even get out of bed. I couldn't move my body. I was so, I overworked myself to the core. And I think burnout also is like, from what I've seen and what I've heard about is, just extreme numbness as well. I believe that like when you're numb to the world, when you're numb to yourself, you no longer feel emotion.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I have had periods of on and off burnout. There's also linked to burnout with mental health and like the mental brains we carry. And for me, like I carry ADHD, CPTSD, which has linked to BPD. And I think I wasn't aware with my own mental health, my own conditions, that I wasn't truly caring or valuing myself as much as I should have. And I didn't witness that, like, a lot of times with a lot of activists who are so passionate and fighting for justice, we always put ourselves last. And we're very selfless about what we do. And I think that was always the case with me. Like, I always just watched what was happening. And there was a lot of organizers as well who were very critical to the work we're doing. And if it wasn't for us doing what we're doing, it wouldn't have got done. And unfortunately, like, we had periods where we had friends who actually passed away, who died because of extreme burnout.
Wow.
And like they worked themselves to I had 2 friends who passed away from like seizures.
I'm so sorry about that.
It's been a journey for healing, but like I've seen the absolute worst that can happen when you work yourself to the bone and don't take care of your mental health or don't take care of your health.
Yeah.
And you put yourself last. And I think after watching and witnessing that, as well, like following a high level conference in New York in March 2023, I bonded with my co-founder, who was my co-founder, on the bench, and we both were just there. We were crying, we were releasing, we were just talking about how extremely burnt out we were, and how much like this shouldn't be the case, and there was such a lack of care, and lack of rest, and a lack of well-being care spaces, especially for us having to be so dependent on, and a lot of the times in these spaces there's a lack of people who actually who have the skills and the abilities to be a care person for others, but often these care people don't make that time to do that care work for themselves. And I often see burnout happen to these people the most. And their emotional support labor has just reached its limit and core, and they completely forgotten, like, when they just like haven't neglected, they completely neglect themselves and who they are, and especially that like their boundaries and balance. I think all of these intertwined to each other has led to, I guess, a lack of practice. And as well, I believe there's such a narrative in these spaces around young people like losing sleep, losing not eating enough. They're always prioritizing work, and advocacy, and then never actually prioritizing the basics. And I think because of this, it can be so overwhelming and overstimulating. But also, there's so much that like is happening in these spaces. People forget to eat and take care of themselves. And
something you're just saying, I'm just like just saying, I was also victim sometimes of that, like sometimes eating too less, taking too less sleep. I get you in many senses. Yeah, for sure.
And it's quite interesting, right? Like we have, all of us right now are so extremely exhausted, but we're continuing powering through the day. And it's interesting how then it actually just goes back to why are we exhausted, and then we should just really focus on the structure of these conferences and making sure there are spaces and the schedules and the negotiations that have more duty of care to its participants. And especially all of us here have spent so much money, organizations funded so much money for us to travel all the way here, and we're representing our communities here. So it's important for us to still like not waste time, but people need to remember that like there's more harm being done, and there's not being doing anything quite meaningful or quite that will have a meaningful impact if you completely have nothing, no battery or like energy.
That's so true.
You
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's something really which we need to really remember more often. Like seriously, yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about myself in that sense,
No,
but just
go for it,
but
yeah.
no, but in that sense, like I've been at some activist spaces where, for instance, like I was at the forest occupation, and I've been filming there for a while, and it was so hard because literally like people were like working so hard. They were like building tree houses into the trees, in 20 to 30 meters high. Like it was so extraordinary what those people were doing, but also so many people were so tired, and and it felt like always like, yo, we need to do that, we need to push, and yeah,
To what point?
yeah, and yeah, it's a really it's a thing. I think it's a really difficult
Thing to
balance
navigate
somehow.
around.
To navigate that. But
And I
also
think,
like
also to cut you off, but I think at the end of the day,
yeah,
people shouldn't individualize themselves in a movement. It should
yeah,
really go back to having a community, and that's the only way that like to fight that capitalistic way of being and
yeah,
navigating the world. Like it's like productivity and like individualism, but like I think it's really important for actually us to go back to being sustainable in the community and each other. Like when one person like allowing each other for it to be okay for us to take breaks
yeah,
and for us to normalize taking step backs, and for people to understand that it's like it's not something that should be you feel should apologize for.
yeah. I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly like I don't know. I just it's such an important topic, and I couldn't agree with you more. Um, what would you now like still say in that sense? What do you think? How should things be better? Like, what are you doing now in your work you're doing right now? Somehow, like, what would you maybe also suggest other people right now listening who are maybe like facing burnout, or that are getting close to it, or some people who are right now listening and they are organizing spaces where like people are getting together. Uh, how would be like the really really positive outlook on that, or like what's your experience so far that people don't get burned out? Like, what would you really recommend
For real, yeah.
we should do differently?
I believe it all goes back to consciousness and like awareness of what your what's happening, and as well as having a support network
Yeah,
that is able to really just hold each other in a way to like really like hold space for each other. And we should never do any of coping and managing any of stresses alone.
yeah,
I'm very lucky to be a part of an incredible networks and spaces, but especially having co-founded my own international organization.
it's so cool though.
Thank you.
What a cool what a cool thing to say.
For real, I'm so,
You can be so proud.
yeah, really incredibly lucky and privileged and grateful um to be a part of it's called Community Care Collective,
Yeah.
and we have truly such a huge community across the world, like grassroots activists, like networks and spaces, and members who very luckily yeah, like we all a big thing that we exist to do is to provide care spaces for each other. And so like in conferences such as this, we hold care spaces and well-being spaces for young people to take a rest, youth activists, and then we do meditation, yoga, creative storytelling, writing, and poetry. And I think it is one way of like, when so often we focus on one thing, we so often just focus on mental, like this kind of work, and neglect the creativity, then you're so easy to burn out on that mental. And so it's so important for us to actually balance that mental and creative brains that we hold.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Seriously.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is a good idea, but I think I would just do it anyways.
Love, yeah.
Just as a question, like, so for the people right now listening and they would like to visit once like a care space you were just like describing, we don't need to do it now like fully in full length or whatever, but maybe can you still like describe, for instance, like what kind of meditation maybe you would like or describe what that meditation would
Space
look
looks
like or
like,
something
yeah.
that the people right now listening, they can think, they can remember your words and say like, okay, I would try to do this now.
For
Maybe
real,
this will
yeah.
help. So
Absolutely, yeah.
how does it go?
For real, yeah. Thanks for asking. A lot of our care spaces actually begin with grounding and breathing exercise.
Yeah.
We begin by first being mindful to the environments that we're in and taking the shoes off and really like having comfortable pillows and bean bags.
Yeah.
And then we also have essential oils to really like have that sensory of the nose and the eyes. And a grounding exercise I love to do is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then having that like different like kind of like breathing, like 5 things you see around you. If you look up on YouTube, it's actually really cool, like breathing grounding exercise. We would recommend that you can do it in your own time.
Yeah.
And following that, we then lead either a space on solidarity or support, or like having like a digital detox.
Yeah.
There as well also. We also have meditation that we actually have professional instructors, practitioners come into the space. Like we pay for them to facilitate that as well. And we've done like yoga, and though that can be quite a barrier having that financial, though it can also even just, but often like all our spaces are free as well, so that's always important. And luckily funding and all that, those things. But if you ever want to experience or would like to self-facilitate a care space, you can search us up on my organization on Instagram.
Yeah.
Community care __. And on there we have techniques, strategies, and as well as examples of previous spaces, care spaces we've hosted.
Yeah.
And I think meditation always looks different for everyone. And yoga, and a lot of time it is for me very religious because I'm Sikh background, and in Sikhism we do meditation every morning, or yoga, like kind of like a very like kirtan and so forth. And different religions have different ways of doing yoga and meditation, and so like, yeah, everyone's brain's very different and unique. So it's like not the same thing will work for everyone. So it's actually just like testing out what works and what doesn't work for you. And yoga could just literally just sitting in silence and being nonverbal, or I could just like be in nature and be with the birds and the seeing, being in a calming environment and just really allowing yourself to breathe and focus on your breathing and focusing on just what is happening around you, and allowing, and just like going back into your body and your soul.
Thank you so much for sharing those words. And I'm like, I think I can also imagine that right now the people listening, there's like a inner tendency somehow to kind of like to put a wish to visit one day like one of those care spaces. Like, I think also quite interesting, like what people naturally lean towards to. I think when you say those words, I'm just like, yes, I would like to do that, you know? All right, I think I have like 2 last final questions. The first would be for the people who are not listening and they think like, hey, you what you're doing is cool. I would kind of like get involved. I would love to support your work somehow. You already mentioned some ways, but are there like some additional ways you would suggest that people could maybe support your work or get in touch with you whatsoever? What you feel like, how can be people part of what you're doing if they have the interest of doing so?
They can absolutely always contact me on Instagram. I'm That's So Raven. So ThatSSORAVERN. And I'm happy to like I'm always a message away, and that I
Yeah.
love to like really like yeah like be a support person for anyone who would like to reach out, and like to be a part of a care space, and as well as being a part of a network and a team that would also love to do that work for other people as well. So that's one way. And I believe as well, just I'm always roaming around in these spaces as well. So you always, if you want to be a part of these forums, come say hi. I always have a colored hair, either blue,
Yeah.
purple, green, red. Always easy to spot. And as well, there's I believe like the universe always brings people who are meant to be together for a reason. And I think like anyone who enters your life and like who is like kind of like a shining little star, and like you can learn so much from and build who you are. I think I'm looking at the moment. I'm working on like resources to
Yeah.
share and around, because I feel like I also have so much knowledge inside. I really am passionate about like putting that to paper and
Yeah.
to really like uh providing that archive of information, as well as all of the activist groups I'm part of in Australia is doing that, working together at the moment, like making zines as well.
Yeah.
So I have a zine coming up soon, and I'm also very interested one day of writing a book. But that will be a long-term thing.
Hey, that would be so cool
Thank
there. I'm
you.
really looking forward for that to read.
Appreciate
Seriously.
that a lot.
Yo, so Ravens, thank you so much for taking your time being here.
Thank
As
you
I
for
just
having
said,
me.
like there's like one final question, and the final question is always the same in this podcast. So are there some thoughts or some ideas which you feel like are important to share, which we didn't touch upon? And as the last words of this podcast are always the one from my guests. So if you have something left to say, kind of like, or there's something you would like to share, please do so. From my side, I would just say a huge thank you that you took the time to be here. For the words you shared, I think for myself, I could learn quite a lot from that. And I think also there was um yeah, it's also you're like a really good reminder somehow that we should really, really value also our breaks and value our community and our care time, and that we should also bring maybe like a bigger attention towards those topics, as yeah, it's not an easy world somehow in many ways. It's really, really disheartening in many ways when you look a little bit around and also see also a little bit into those cracks and see also what is happening actually there. But thank you so much for taking your time, your energy, steering this space and pouring it into that we actually can do maybe the work we're doing on a longer run.
Thank you so much.
So the last words are yours. Thank you so much for taking your time, and that's it from myself.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah,
Thank
really, really
you.
appreciate it. I really want to echo and to really push to other people that it's so important to love yourself and to love the people around you, and to focus on doing the work and working on improving yourself. And like a lot of time we face so much adversity, we face so many barriers, we face so many challenges, and I think they never define who you are. What truly defines who we are is uh who we the soul we carry, and the values we carry, and just the way that we make people feel. And that's how we will be remembered, is
Yeah.
by impacting that in that sense. I think we're never defined by the work we do. We're defined by the hearts we carry and the values we carry. And I think it's so important for us to never solely focus on a title or a role, because at the end of the day, like, we're all in this together, in this fight together, and we're all equal, and one person is no better than the other person. And I think in a world where imposter syndrome exists and people compare themselves a lot, and that's the way that we've been groomed when we were kids, right? And I think there's so much unlearning and degrowth, and that work is so crucial to then be able to then do work that will further make an impact and build spaces of care and rest. And I think I really want to push for people to look into anti-capitalist and anti-colonial readings and information and sources out there, and to really fight for the injustices that exist for Palestine, for Congo, for Sudan, for Indigenous peoples all across the world. So often we're in this universe, and so often we focus on what's directly affecting us. But if we take a moment to observe and to truly acknowledge the world and the suffering, and as well as animals, not just us, but like the life that's on this planet, the world will be a way better place. Thank you.